Picture yourself in a packed room where every person is reaching for the same prize. Some play straight, grind daily, and hold tight to their values. Others lie, twist the rules, and step over anyone blocking their path. Strangely, the cutthroat types are the ones who often end up on top. Why does it feel like the game is tilted toward the very worst players? Look around. History, politics, business. Wherever you focus, you'll spot figures who gain staggering influence despite tossing basic decency aside. From iron-fisted rulers to razor-sharp executives, the pattern keeps repeating. That isn't some random glitch. It's woven into our species' story, rooted in evolutionary drives and the social systems those drives built. In a world where resources rarely meet everyone's wants, competition turns harsh. The people who pause to weigh fairness at every move usually get left behind, while those willing to exploit, mislead, and dominate surge ahead. This brutal fact raises a hard question. In the struggle for power, is morality just a handicap? Yet there's a twist. The same records that celebrate these ruthless rises also record their dramatic falls. So the puzzle isn't just why the worst climb so quickly. It's whether their victory can hold, and what their ascent means for anyone who won't trade away personal principles. Nietzsche viewed power as a raw, undeniable force, neither holy nor vile, simply part of life's engine. To grasp why the harshest actors win, we have to examine the shape of power itself. That trail leads to one of his most argued over ideas, master morality versus slave morality. Imagine two fighters meeting on open ground. One is bold, sure of himself, and unafraid. He grabs what he wants, bends the setting to his will, and never seeks permission. The other hesitates, searching the faces around him for approval, trusting fairness to repay his goodness. Which one is likelier to last? Which one is likelier to lead? Nietzsche argued that what we call ethics isn't some universal law. It grows from clashes over dominance. Across the ages, he saw two basic moral codes take shape. Master morality belongs to the strong, the builders and conquerors. Its ideals are force, courage, drive, and outright creation. In that view, good is anything that boosts their power to shape the world. They define their own worth, shoulder their own fate, and treat weakness not as something sacred, but as a hurdle to clear. Slave morality rises among the ruled and the silenced. Lacking direct force, they praise humility, obedience, and self-denial. Suffering gains a halo, and power earns suspicion. Nietzsche believed this outlook formed as a defense, a mental shield that let the powerless endure under tougher hands. But here's the part many find unsettling. Slave morality doesn't block ruthless climbers, it clears their path. By painting ambition as shameful and power as dirty, it leaves the field wide open for those who ignore both labels. While the kind-hearted pause, the hard-willed strike, and in a contest where hesitation equals defeat, the outcome feels inevitable. What do we do with that truth? Should we toss out ethics and copy the predators? Or is there some way to blend strength with integrity? To dig further, picture a wild, untouched landscape. Out here, survival isn't about fairness or courtesy. It hinges on grit, quick shifts, and a willingness to cross any line necessity draws. The lion never asks before hunting, the storm never says sorry for wreckage. Remember the quote, "Nature does not reward morality, it rewards." In that same unforgiving landscape where nature does not reward morality, it rewards, the story of human society unfolds almost identically. Strip away our written laws, tidy offices, and polite greetings, and a raw contest for limited resources still hums beneath the surface. The people who push their way to the front of that contest nearly always share a single edge: ruthlessness. Not needless cruelty, but the calm ability to act fast, decide hard, and move on without paralyzing guilt. That edge did not appear by accident. It evolved because groups and empires that bred decisive actors survived, while those dominated by hesitation faded. Modern psychology keeps confirming this. In tight, high-stakes fields, finance trading floors, political war rooms, battlefield command tents, researchers find the same trio of traits repeating: giant ambition, muted fear signals, and, most difficult for many to swallow, a thinner layer of empathy when someone stands between them and the goal. This pattern does not prove every powerful leader is a clinical psychopath. What it does show is that many successful figures operate with emotional brakes adjusted far looser than most people would ever feel comfortable with. Think about the titans whose biographies line every bookstore shelf. Julius Caesar pushed across the Rubicon despite warnings of treason. Modern tech founders gamble billions on untested ideas, then shrug off staggering losses that would keep ordinary folks up for weeks. What links them is not luck. It is the refusal to linger on what-ifs. They hurry into risk, claim the rewards, and sort out fallout later, because in ruthless math, delay equals defeat. But woven into every rise is the seed of a potential crash. Power seized through sharp elbows can unravel if its holder never learns restraint. A ruler who leans only on terror eventually sparks the backlash that topples his throne. A CEO who ignores every moral break can sink the brand the moment customers revolt. History's scrap heap is crowded with names once painted invincible, only until the same fierce qualities that lifted them began shredding alliances, feeding paranoia, or blinding them to changing tides. So does that mean fairness, kindness, and honesty are forever doomed in real-life leagues? Not quite, though accepting why means letting go of a cherished myth, the idea that the world itself runs on fairness. From the first stories we hear as children, we're handed a hopeful script. Work hard, be decent, trust that justice rides to the rescue. Fairy tales, classroom posters, and many comforting philosophies replay that promise. Step outside those walls, though, and contradictions slam into view. The warehouse worker pulling double shifts may never break even. The whistleblower who tells the truth may get fired. The gentle neighbor raising everyone's spirits often carries the heaviest wounds. This clash is no glitch to be debugged. It is how the system has always run. Fairness, as popularly told, is largely a story we spread to keep crowds cooperative. Real rewards flow to whoever understands and wields power with sharper strategy than the next contender. Psychologists even have a label for the mental trap that keeps people clinging to the comforting tale, the just world fallacy. Believing everything will balance naturally feels good, yet it gently lulls many into passive waiting. If you assume effort alone brings success, you may skip the hard planning, the networking, the pushback against people already gaming the rules. Meanwhile, the players who see through that illusion advance without apology. Accepting this doesn't force us to toss ethics out the window, but it does demand a sober look. Power almost never hands itself to the best behaved. It is seized, protected, and compounded by those trained in the game's real moves. Nietzsche recognized that tension long before the term just world fallacy existed. His answer was not surrender to cruelty nor naive hope that fairness would magically correct itself. Instead, he gestured towards something beyond both poles. The person who transcends weakness without slipping into petty domination, the Übermensch. Picture standing on a cliff edge. Behind you stretches the familiar village, full of rules, shame, and ceilings on ambition. Ahead lies a dark valley most refuse. The very few who stride onward become architects of their own code. In Nietzsche's frame, that leap is not about crushing others for sport. It is about self-overcoming, refusing to stay small for the sake of approval. Refusing scripted morality that demands you shrink your will to match a prescribed mold. At the core of this figure is the will to power. Popular misreadings frame that phrase as a hunger to boss everyone around. Nietzsche's own lines point elsewhere. The will to power is the creative thrust to shape meaning where none is given, the internal engine to sculpt chaos into new form. In that sense, it is first mastery of oneself. The weak freeze in fear of judgment. The Übermensch feels that fear, then moves anyway, guided by a compass built inside rather than rules pinned up outside. Because their drive comes from inner conviction, they don't need to cheat or dominate just to feel tall. By contrast, the worst kinds of climbers, manipulators, petty tyrants, status jockeys, depend on constant outside proof. They play a short game, snatching perks until the structure they ignore finally buckles. This difference reveals why the most ruthless might sprint ahead, yet fail to reach any lasting summit. They treat life as a finite contest, one when others are drained. The Übermensch approaches existence as an infinite game. The real prize is ongoing creation, the steady forging of value bigger than any single conquest. That mindset neither idolizes victimhood nor glorifies cruelty. It merges discipline with imagination, merging strength and authenticity into one current that cannot be faked. But how do ordinary people who still care about decency move through arenas clearly tilted toward colder players? Imagine sitting at a poker table where certain veterans openly stack chips with borrowed cash, bluff without shame, and lean on side deals. If you walk in assuming house rules guarantee fairness, you will leave broke. Many confuse the situation and think the only alternative is to copy the cheaters outright. That is the trap. There exists a quieter, harder path, learning every technical angle of the game, staying unpredictable, guarding your emotional reactions, and, when necessary, pushing back with calculated pressure. That hybrid, integrity fused with strategic insight, lets principled competitors stay in the fight without surrendering their core. Nietzsche's writings never argued for a cartoonish power grab. They urged people to grow teeth as well as heart, to view power as a tool rather than an idol. Step 1 is to map how the real world distributes leverage, who controls vital resources, how information flows, where alliances form. Step 2 is to recognize myths that cloud judgment, especially the assumption that goodness on its own persuades adversaries. Step 3 is internal. Train willpower, sharpen skill, set boundaries so exploitation bounces back instead of sticking. By doing so, you sidestep the all-or-nothing choice society often presents: be ruthless or be crushed. Life should be fair. It shouldn't, it never was. The toughest players learn that lesson long before most people even notice the rules. Instead of grumbling about injustice, they study the field, spot every loophole, and press any edge they can find. They do not dump their ethics in the trash. They just understand that power itself carries no moral flag. Whoever grasps how it works commands it. A lot of decent people stall out because they trust that simple kindness will eventually hand them a prize. Yet power is almost never a gift. It is grabbed, guarded, and multiplied. Claiming it does not demand turning into a bully, but it does require reading the minds of those who would happily back you into a corner. That kind of strategic empathy means scanning a room, sensing motives, and forecasting moves 2 or 3 steps ahead. It lets you walk through fog and spot traps without setting any yourself. Fear trips up most of the crowd. Fear of messing up, fear of being laughed at, fear of walking alone. The Übermensch switches that wiring by building strength on the inside. That means leaning into discomfort, wagering something you could lose, and hacking a trail even when the majority says it cannot be done. People who reach the top rarely beg for a green light. They punch holes in the ceiling and install their own skylights. Notice the difference between reckless ruthlessness and controlled ruthlessness. The first torches everything in sight out of panic or greed. The second accepts that some choices sting, yet presses forward anyway. Sometimes power insists that you cut loose a toxic friend, make a move that rattles the crowd, or stare an ugly fact in the face. That is not cruelty. That is disciplined force, applied at the exact point where delay would cost you far more. Yes, ruthless climbers often rocket upward. They also tend to crash just as sharply because their foundation rests on extraction, not creation. The genuine Übermensch build a company, a philosophy, a community, or simply a radically improved self. Whatever shape the project takes, it adds value that did not exist before. When you pour real value into the world, you cannot be replaced by a cheaper copy, and you need no shady tricks to hold your ground because your influence is earned rather than stolen. So can a principled person thrive in a realm that seems wired for cutthroat tactics? Absolutely, but only after dropping the old scripts about automatic fairness and picking up a new manual on power written in your own handwriting. That shift raises a bigger puzzle. Is power itself evil, or have we been looking at it through a blurred lens? Power moves everything around us, shaping the fates of people who control it and of people caught in its wake. Many say power corrupts. Nietzsche's reply was more nuanced. He argued that the hunger for power is mainly misunderstood. At its core, the drive to gain power is less about stamping others down and more about leaping past your previous ceiling, about breaking the chain that tethers you to yesterday's limits. Even so, across the centuries, we witness kings, presidents, executives, and revolutionaries who start out inspired and end up drowning in ego and greed. The moment they grip the reins, some lose any trace of restraint. That recurring disaster forces us to ask, does power rot a person, or does it simply rip the mask off flaws that were always there? Nietzsche's answer cuts deeper. At its purest, power is not the urge to harm, it is the push to surpass yesterday's self, to chase the edge of greatness, to mint new values when none existed. Failing to see this, society often brands any open quest for power as shady. In a culture that praises humility, the individual who dares to claim authority risks looking suspect. But maybe that suspicion is a misunderstanding. Maybe by rejecting hand-me-down morals and penning fresh principles, such a person is just living life in its boldest raw form, unfiltered, unapologetic, and fully. The will to power, then, is not a crude wish to boss others. It is an inner engine driving you to suck every ounce out of being alive, to poke at the edge of your talents, to paint meaning onto blank space. Seen this way, power flips into an ethical adventure. It invites you to snap the bars of social cages and carve an existence true to your own blueprint. Yet that invitation is double-edged. Not everyone who steps onto the road is noble. One traveler may use power to invent clean energy or rewrite broken laws. Another may seize it to crush dissent. The result splits along intent. Is power your weapon to twist other people, or your furnace for self-refinement? So, is power evil? No. It is a tool, like fire. In clean hands, it lights cities. In careless hands, it raises them. The task Nietzsche sets in front of anyone listening is simple to describe and brutal to execute. Stop fearing power, start mastering. That means discipline over impulse, strength over excuse, and an iron promise to outgrow yesterday's version of yourself, whatever it takes. If these questions about why the worst so often climb and what real power might be have sparked something restless in your own mind, you have already stepped onto the trail Nietzsche marked. Now comes the hard part, deciding how far forward you are willing to walk. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.